Pump it up, kitty. Just pump it up, kitty cat. Where you at? There you go. Put 2 paws on the floor, 2 in the air, and then just go. Kitty go, kitty go, kitty go. And just ride, kitty ride, kitty ride, kitty roll.
When I say Casey has a running theme of legacy, I mean it more than just metaphorically. His armor is basically a humanized turtle sans a shell, his mother's mask is painted with Leo's striking red stripes, his knee pads with little faces on them are very reminiscent of Mikey, Donnie's tech keeps him armed and protected, and his mask even scans the way that Donnie's goggles do. He quite literally wears the influences of the people in his life who aren't there anymore. He's introduced as the loyal student of Master Leonardo, whom Casey refers to as his sensei, which we can all kind of infer what that word is traditionally a stand-in for in the TMNT universe. In this opening scene, we're given a New York about 20-some-odd years into the future that's been decimated beyond recognition. The injured Leo is dragged along by Casey as they flee a pack of Krang dogs. Surrounded on all sides by Krang, time running thin for them all, and realizing that there is no escape, Leo admits defeat and gives Casey a mission to go back in time to stop these events from happening in the first place. Casey resists out of fear of losing Leo. It actually sounds at first like he's going to outright refuse, but Leo doesn't let him. Then, perhaps in an attempt to impart one final lesson to Casey, Leo tells him,
"Casey, it's not about me."
This is a recurring phrase in this movie. Specifically, it's a lesson for younger Leo to learn and grow as a character, but it's also a lesson Casey must learn that I'll touch on later. Leo throws him through the portal that Mikey creates before being killed while protecting Casey. By this point, we've technically killed 2 of our main characters on screen and established Casey's role in the story. Stop the apocalypse. Which, in his defense, is quite a daunting task for a teenage boy, and Leo's instructions of find the key, stop the Krang are rather vague, but points for brevity, I guess. That said, it's no surprise that once he makes it to the past, Casey is struggling without his teacher there to give him direction and desperately wishes he were there to do so. He sees New York pre-decimation and realizes just how many people he's responsible for now that Leo has passed the responsibility on to him. But how does one even begin to stop the end of the world? Why him? He finds comfort in knowing that technically his teacher is here in the past and decides that his plan of action should be to find him and see what he should do next. Of course, the plot needs him to find the Hamados, so that certainly plays a part in his decision here. But he doesn't resolve to find them because he thinks they'll know where the key is. He wants to find Leo because he thinks, surely, Leo will know what to do. He'll state later that the world needs Master Leonardo, and we'll talk a little bit more about that scene in a minute, but with this in mind, throughout the movie he sees saving the world as something his master could do, not him. Casey feels incapable of standing on his own. Perhaps he's not had to up to this point, since we see that Casey easily defers to others for direction. I think it's safe to assume that Casey is around Leo's age by the time he goes back, and I don't think it's a stretch to assume that this is probably his first major solo mission, and it was obviously not exactly planned. He's clearly very comfortable being a follower. This isn't necessarily a character flaw in and of itself, but the downside to this is that once he reunites with the family, he almost blindly follows Leo even as he's making rash decisions that endanger the team based solely on the fact that it's Leo he's following. It isn't until they almost die that he confronts Leo about his apparent lack of leadership skills. In the scene after the Krang train chase, we see that Casey has already absorbed a lot of his master's teachings. He understands the importance of teamwork and humility, perhaps because the pressing environment he grew up in didn't give him a choice. But it's here that we also see that Casey understands these teachings, but hasn't considered that perhaps Leo doesn't. He's angry because Leo doesn't. For much of the movie, Casey has been lost in trying to follow someone who is already dead, and has been projecting that person onto someone else who can't possibly live up to his expectations as a way to cope with his loss. He speaks to Leo as though Leo isn't 20-something years younger, and notably not in an apocalypse yet. Logically, he seems to understand that Leo isn't his master yet, but he also seems to ignore it in favor of relishing in the comfort that Leo is here, even if it's not so much Leo himself as much as it is what Leo represents. Leo is, of course, delighted to find someone who finally thinks he's doing something right. But for all intents and purposes, despite the fact that they're the same person on a technicality, Master Leonardo and Leo are not the same people. And though he has good reason to be tearing Leo a new one in this scene, and it's definitely what Leo needs, it's unrealistic of him to have expected a 16-year-old boy to have the same skills and knowledge as an apocalyptic war veteran. And yet he does, because he isn't ready to let go of the Leo he remembers. I think that's why this moment when Casey throws the photo down for Leo to pick up and make his decision is so important. I'm of the belief that he's partially doing it because he knows it's the push Leo needs, mostly because of this smug little look he has when Leo agrees to step up as the leader, combined with the fact that I have a hard time believing Casey had Master Manipulator Leo as an implied father figure and didn't learn a little something about getting his way. But I also think it's out of frustration. For Leo, the photo is a reminder of what's on the line, who he fights for. But for Casey, it's a reminder of the people he's left behind and the people who are depending on him to change their fates. He needs Leo to see what he sacrificed to be here, what his teachers sacrificed to give Leo this opportunity, and to see what they have both already lost. In the same way that this is the moment Leo has to either shift his mentality or lose his family, Casey is forced to face the fact that his family, at least as he knew them, is already gone. This isn't the Leo he knew because this Leo hasn't gone through what Master Leonardo did yet. And it's Casey's mission to make sure he never has to.
Bum